All right, welcome back to our third of three-part installment of looking at old released multiple choice diploma exam questions for economics. Hope this process gives you a little bit more practice with multiple choice so that moving forward, when we get to our political unit, you will feel a little more prepared. And let's go through these questions. Now, we are on the 2011 practice exam, and I will give you a link to that as well. So no doubt if you're at this link watching me, you are also at the link with the exam booklet. You'll want to have two copies of the exam again because they have the questions and the sources divided into different sections. So you'll want two copies of the exam open so you can see them both. And again, not every question will work for the economic unit. So let's take a look. So let's begin with number 3. John Locke, Montesquieu, Smith, and Mill, what do they have in common? So these guys are mentioned in related issue 1, so we should be able to answer this question. Number 3, each of the people identified in the diagram promoted the idea that the power of the state over actions of individuals should be limited. Let me think about that. Let me go back to the list. Well, Smith thinks that. Government hands off. John Stuart Mill. Let's go back to the descriptor. The power of the state should be limited. Yeah, harm principle. Freedom should be absolute unless they're harming. Locke, he's a liberal as well. Montesquieu, checks and balances. Power of the state should be limited. Yeah, I think that's the answer. That seems to be too easy. Societies can only prosper and endure when collectivists. No, they're not collectivists. The highest priority of government should be to ensure that the ruling elite maintains political power. They're not elitists. Because humans are corrupt by nature, their impulses need to be kept under control by an authoritarian leader. That's Hobbes. They're not Hobbes. A is our answer. A is our answer. Canadian courts, that looks like a political set. Let's see, 7 to 11. Seems more political. 12 to 15. Total government control, no individual freedom, total freedom. The anarchist position would be, so anarchists want total freedom, no government, so that's D. The concept of the divine right of kings. Enlightenment thinkers like Locke and monarchists. Oh, this is interesting. We haven't really talked a lot about the divine right of kings and the French Revolution. They are in chapter 3. Let's go back and see if we can figure out where they would be on the spectrum. So, under what was the concept of the divine right in historical? The divine right, authority comes from God. Therefore, the monarch is the hand of God. We don't question God. God and the government have total control. We have no freedom relative to God. So it is A. And then what was the next one? John Locke in the mid-18th century. I'm just struggling a little bit with a sore neck here today. Well, he's not an anarchist. Individuals like Locke and Mill believe in some government, so it's not here, but they believe in more freedom than control. So I'm going to go C. Monarchists during the French Revolution. Wow, monarchists. So they are monarchy in the French Revolution believed in the divine right. I'm going to just go back to A on that one. All right, number 16. Privatization, reduction of taxes, deregulation, elimination of universal health care. So again, this is where in your notes we have to get our terms, our ideologies, and in our notes also connect those ideologies to values. And once we do that, we can identify all these 4 things are on the right. Deregulation sounds like Reagan, privatization, reduction of taxes. Let's see what our options are for number 16. Which of the following terms correctly replaces the thing in the middle, while Reagan is a supply-side economist or leader promoting supply-side economics. I'm going to go with D on that. Number 17. Big, long reading. Gotta love that. Gotta love that. Number 17. Information in the excerpt indicates that prior to the New Deal era, American social values most strongly emphasized. So, prior to the New Deal, before 1933, in America, let me think about my knowledge of history before we tackle the source. Self-reliance. They practiced classic economic liberalism. Capitalism, in essence, self-reliance. American dream, self-reliance. Individualism, rugged individualism, sure screams A. I'm going to still read it, but sure screams A. Emphasize class conflict. I mean, I don't think that they promoted it. I don't think they're like, hey, come to America where you can be on the wrong side of class conflict. National pride sure is an American thing. Economic equality sure does not sound like America before the New Deal. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to say, okay, before the New Deal, American social values emphasized, is it self-reliance? Is it national pride? Let's take a peek. Oh man, that's way too big. The New Deal created a liberal political alliance of unions, blacks, and other minorities, some farmers and others receiving government relief. Wasn't talking about that part that we needed. The hardship brought on by the Depression affected, I like how it's affected with an A, Americans deeply. Since the prevailing attitude in the 1920s, this might be it, was that success was earned. Success was earned. It followed that failure was deserved. The prevailing attitude in the 1920s was that success was earned. Go back to the question. Information in the excerpt indicates that prior to the New Deal, American social values, success was earned, was strongly emphasized self-reliance. Success was earned. There it is, 17's A. 18. Which of the following titles would be the most appropriate for this excerpt? The New Deal created economic and political crises. That's an interesting twist. I've heard of the New Deal trying to solve an economic crisis, but not creating one. The New Deal returned America to its free market roots. Well, we know that's not the case. It takes it away from the free market roots. The New Deal eliminated racial and gender discrimination. Yeah, because, after 1933, everything was great in America. No. The New Deal stimulated change to American social attitudes. I'm going to read it now. I'm going to look for these things. Is it focusing on how after the New Deal, women and ethnic minorities are equal? Is it going to talk about it because of the New Deal, we go to capitalism? Probably not. Is it going to talk about the crisis that it creates, not solves, but creates? Or is it going to say it changes attitudes? Let's see. Still the same source, right? Yeah. The unemployment brought on by the Depression caused self-blame and self-doubt. Men were harder hit psychologically than women were. Since men were expected to provide for their families, it was humiliating to have to ask for assistance, although some argued that women should not be given jobs. When many men were unemployed, the percentage of women working increased slightly during the Depression. Traditionally, female fields of teaching and social services grew under New Deal programs. Children took on more responsibilities, sometimes finding work that their parents could not. As a result of living through the Depression, some people developed habits of careful saving and frugality, others determined to create a comfortable life for themselves. So, based on this paragraph so far, did it eliminate gender discrimination? Well, women played a more prominent role, but it's not just about that. Did it eliminate racial discrimination? Well, we still don't know whether or not they discriminated against women and people of different ethnic groups. We just know that women had more employment opportunities. Stimulated change to American social attitudes. Looking in that paragraph. As a result of living through the Depression, some people develop habits of careful saving and frugality. Change to American social attitudes. Children took on more responsibilities. Change to American social attitudes. Maybe. African Americans suffered more than whites since their jobs were often taken away from them and given to whites. Well, sure sounds like it's not this then, because African Americans are being discriminated. Not eliminating it, it seems to be expanding it. In the 1920s, 50% of blacks are unemployed. However, Eleanor Roosevelt championed black rights and New Deal programs prohibited discrimination. Okay, well, maybe it could be that. Discrimination continued in the South, however. Discrimination continued in the South as a result of a large number of black voters switched from the Republican to the Democrat Party. The Republican Party, the party that ended up freeing the slaves. Discrimination continued in the South. So, eliminated racial discrimination. Discrimination continued in the South. Eliminated. So, it seems to me it can't be C. Like right there, that says it can't be C. The Great Depression and the New Deal changed forever the relationship between Americans and their government. Stimulated change to American social attitudes. Government involvement and responsibility in caring for the needy and regulating the economy came to be expected. It's a new attitude. I'm going to go with D. I am going to go with D. The writer, number 19, suggests that one result of the New Deal was that governments used fiscal policy reform. Well, we know that they did use fiscal policy reform to encourage entrepreneurship. Well, the way that they use the word fiscal policy reform to encourage entrepreneurship, it almost sounds like they're suggesting that there's fiscal responsibility there, that they're spending less. And we know that the New Deal, they spent more, and they didn't necessarily, I mean, there were some alphabet agencies that encourage entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship is self-reliance, and alphabet agencies really, for the most part, based upon freedom through government, not freedom from government. I'll put an M, but a little m, meaning that I'm pretty sure it's not. Citizens became increasingly critical of the actions of large corporations. Well, they might have, yeah, maybe they should have too, but I don't see any really attention in that article to corporations. Even if that is a reality, that's what happened, the writer suggests that one result of the New Deal was that. We don't see that. We don't see the writer suggesting that. Governments placed a greater emphasis on promoting economic security. Well, we know that that's what the New Deal is, relief, recovery, reform. Citizens became increasingly suspicious of motivation for government policies. No, they didn't become suspicious based upon the article. Now, many in America did become suspicious of FDR, but that's not what the writer suggests. Let's go back and see if we can see any pull towards governments placed a greater emphasis on promoting economic security. Government involvement and responsibility in caring for the needy and regulating the economy came to be expected. It seems to be right there. And it does fit in what we know about the alphabet agencies. I'm going to go with that. Number 20. As a consequence for research on the history of liberalism, this excerpt would be considered to be an opinion-based source that use primary documentation to identify the negative consequences. Well, does it focus on the negative? I mean, some people may see these things as negative, but it doesn't necessarily focus just on negative stuff, right? Talk about how they tried to get rid of discrimination. A factual source that offers details regarding the various New Deal programs. Well, we don't see like a whole list of New Deal programs in here, right? There should be like TVA did this, CCC did that, SEC, yada, yada, yada. I don't see programs listed. An opinion-based source that uses evidence to celebrate the New Deal's impact. So, is it opinion-based? Or a factual source that provides an overview of the consequences? Is it, hey, let's celebrate the New Deal? Or is it, hey, this is what happens because of the New Deal? This is one that I do believe a number of students have gotten wrong in the past. So read it over, think about it, pause me. Now that you unpause, yeah, you know what? We're going to go with A. We're going to say it's a factual source that provides an overview of the consequences because it's not just celebrating the New Deal's impact, it's talking about positive and negative things. It talks about some of the dependence that's created, but it also talks about some of the growth in civil rights coming out of it. So we do have a balance there. I don't think 21 to 25 are economic ones. Oh, wait, yeah, they are. We have even more economic ones. What a landslide. Which of the following titles best summarizes the intent of the three sources? Ah, man, we got to read all three for the first question? That's horrible. Evolution of liberal philosophy, liberal ideas and values in decline, challenges to liberal values and beliefs, contradictions inherent. Man, those all sound great. I'm going to leave 21 until after I look at those sources. Oh, 22 is about all the sources. Okay, 23, just one source. I'm going to do that one first. Which phrase from source 2 is a reference to people such as Marx and Owen? Nouveau riche. Karl Marx, the new rich. No. Aristocracy. King Karl. I don't think so. Urban laborers or sympathetic intellectuals. Certainly, they're both seen as intellectuals, sympathetic towards the cause of workers and collectivists. I could see it being D. 24. In the context of this resources, the primary purpose of 2. Wow, these are a lot of questions where it's all together. I guess we're going to have to go back and look at 2 now. What was 2? Oops, let's leave this one up. Forgot I had 2 windows. So, 2, the Industrial Revolution was a time period of unprecedented economic growth and of seemingly endless innovation. A host of new machines contributed to the emergence of the factory system and the mass production of an array of consumer goods. The mass market evolved and economic growth occurred on a scale never before experienced. Rapid urbanization took place as people moved to be near the new factories. The owners of these industries emerged as the nouveau riche. Economically powerful class threatening the political privileges of the aristocracy at the other end of the economic scale. Another new class, the urban laborers, emerged. For them, life was dreary, dangerous, poverty, disease, widespread, hastily built slums. As time passed, this class began to organize to create worker organizations that could demand better treatment. They also emerged sympathetic intellectuals who called for changes. Calls also came for political reform. This is a great summary of the Industrial Revolution. Well, let's see here. Purpose is to illustrate the emergence of and responses to classic liberalism. Emergence of classic liberalism. Responses of classic liberalism. So emergence of classic liberalism. As a consequence, this happens. Responses to classic liberalism, we have these sympathetic intellectuals. The emergence is here. The responses are here. Yeah, that could be it. Criticize the excesses. Promote the values. Identify the origins of liberal economic philosophers. Well, it doesn't talk about the origins of Adam Smith. Promote the values of self-reliance and individualism. It seems to be highlighting some of the danger and poverty and stuff. They wouldn't do that if that's the case. Criticize the excesses. Well, I just said that they had the poverty and everything there. all of this up here isn't necessarily criticizing the successes. It's really describing the emergence of classic economic liberalism, and then as a consequence, some of the responses to it. And that, my friends, was A. Taken together, information in the sources indicates that a fundamental difference between early and later liberal philosophers is the value placed upon universal access to education. Well, probably, but are they talking about education? The role of government in the operation, need for constitutionally guaranteed minority rights, belief in the ability of a free market to achieve growth. Well, let's go and look. Classic liberal philosophers emerged, regarded class structure, mercantile is inhibiting the liberty of individuals, catchphrase, invisible hand, yada yada. So this is Adam Smith, talking about Adam Smith's era. As the abuses in the Industrial Revolution became obvious, and with the threat, should reform not occur, revolutionary change might, a new wave of liberal philosophers emerged. So this is modern liberalism, right? Democratic reform, expanding suffrage, regulate and protect workers and consumers. So I'm not seeing education specifically. I'm not seeing minority rights specifically, but I am seeing specifically the role of government in the operation of the economy. Here, they're talking about hands off. Here, they're talking about freedom through, right? Here they're talking about freedom through. And here they're talking about some of the responses and the calls for political reform. So I can see it being that. Which ones did we skip? Which of the following titles best summarizes the intent of these sources? Evolution of liberal philosophy. So we have classic in the beginning, we have modern in the end. Sure seems like it. Liberal ideas and values in decline? Question. Challenges to liberal values. It's not just the challenges, it talks about the evolution, right? Contradictions. So I'm going to stay with A because it does show the changes in attitudes. It even specifically talks about here a new wave of liberal philosophers emerged, right? So this change in attitude. All right, so let's see what comes next. 26 to 28. Look economic. Which of the following issues most directly relates to headlines of all four newspapers? To what extent should government alter monetary policy to control economic growth? To what extent should government support failing private industries during recessions? To what extent should government use fiscal policies? To what extent should government nationalize? So we could go back and try to match them one at a time. Public works. Public works to create employment. Government increases spending. That sounds like fiscal policy, right? Spend. Unemployment rate rising. Anti-poverty group appeals for additional state funds. Corporate profits fail. Businesses call for tax cuts. The definition of fiscal policy is tax and spend. Circle that. From the perspective of a laissez-faire economist, the headline that identifies the most acceptable thing, laissez-faire economists are on the right. They're capitalists. They're going to want, they're going to want small government. This is the daily. Now, this is weird, though, because I would think A, B, C, D, and I'm tempted to go D for daily, but daily here is C. The Post is D. You got to be careful. You got to double check, right? The daily, because daily says C there, but I would think A, B, C, D, but no, I'm going to go with this one. Corporate businesses call for tax cuts. That's more of a laissez-faire thing to want. From the perspective of a Marxist, these headlines prove that a market-oriented economy means that production can be collectively owned. That doesn't happen in a market-oriented economy. Divergent opinions regarding state exist as a result of distinctive economic classes. While there still is class warfare, So there is a pull to that, and we have different opinions. Means of production are of less economic importance than the supply? Class divisions have been eliminated. Well, it can't be that. We do have different opinions, therefore different classes. Marx wanted to get rid of classes, so there we go. All right, now we've got some other ones that are not economic in nature. We're going to skip ahead a little bit here. That's of the unit we haven't looked at yet. You could do this one, 75 to 78, or 45, sorry, to 48. Just feels like 75 at this point. Identify the philosophers. We should each act so as to promote the greatest happy for the greatest number of people. So again, what we need to have down is a list of key people and simply what is their ideology. Greatest happy for the greatest number of good. That's how we should act. You know, I was hoping to see Karl Marx here, but I don't see that. So go back. We should act so as to promote the greatest happiness for the greatest number of good. That's a utilitarian point of view, really. And John Stuart Mill is a utilitarian. So there's nothing that's going to help me in the question other than knowing that. The French Revolution was not a movement towards a representative and constitutional democracy, but rather a destruction of tradition. Who likes tradition? Burke. The people should make laws directly rather than laws imposed above them. In order to ensure stability and security, people must, however, accept the role of government to enforce the general will. General will. Okay, you go back into your mindset and you're like, okay, general will, that's my guy Rousseau. Government by a strong ruler is necessary. So that must be our good boy Hobbes. And there it is. So, again, those are recall questions. So we do need to cast characters for questions like that. Again, we haven't done the Soviet Union yet. So now we're up to questions that have no source booklet. So just standalone questions. Standalone questions. So there's going to be some that are economic. The supply side policies of Thatcher, Reagan, Friedman are most closely aligned to. So again, these guys are on the right of the economic spectrum. So was Adam Smith. Founders of the United States established a Republican form of government with a system of checks and balances in an effort to ensure that no one person or branch could wield excessive powers. These are recall, right? Checks and balances, matching, chunking. This is nothing in the question that's really going to help you. This is have you memorized that content. Historically, both democratic socialists and Marxist communists agree that capitalists are exploitive. Yeah, I can see that. Oh, got an eyelash. That a capitalist system can be ended only through gradual. No, that socialists think gradual, Marxists think violent. On the extent to which the media should be free, they believe in free media, they do not. On the extent to which the judicial branch should have the power to overrule. Nope and yes, so it's that capitalists are exploitive. Keynes greatly influenced the evolution of economic liberalism by advocating for governments to use fiscal and monetary policy to regulate. That's straight recall. Which practice in democratic states? We haven't done maybe that yet. That's more political. Universal social programs that redistribute wealth within society reflect values of not individualism, not neo-libs over here, or classic libs. We have a 3-1 split. Classic liberalism's on the right, neoliberalism's on the right, individualism's on the right, egalitarianism's on the left. What is egalitarianism? Redistributing wealth, right? Trying to get everybody to be more equal. There's your answer. Great man theory, you'll be looking at when you look at dictatorships. Social Darwinism, we've already made the connection in class to laissez-faire capitalism. So a lot of these are just recall of what have you picked up in class. Now we got a run of political ones. Historically, provision of cradle-to-grave welfare programs. So where would the state take care of you from cradle to grave? There's would be least likely to be in a capitalist one, but how are we going to distinguish between utopian socialist, Marxist communist, and democratic socialist there? How are we going to decide? Well, I'm going to say cradle to grave welfare programs. They're They're connected to Sweden. Sweden, we think, as a democratic socialist country. Utopian socialist, we see that more as a 19th century thing where government wasn't doing that. And Marxist communist, we often don't use this phrase with them. So there it is, I guess. Advocates of universal social programs would likely support. So we like universal social programs. We want to make sure that we can pay for them by taxing the rich people and giving it to the poor people. That makes a little sense because work for welfare is damaging the poor. Productivity incentives, it elevates those most able. Privatized healthcare will damage the poor. This is the only one that, by extension, can help poor people and help out universal social programs. There's a lot of economic questions here. From the perspective of free market economists, government-funded programs are government-funded programs unacceptable because they discourage self-reliance. Right? We don't like it because we like individualism, we like self-reliance, government-funded programs. If you have a guaranteed income, you're going to make $250 a day. If you don't work, why would you work? From the perspective of Marxists, nationalization of the means of production is essential because it encourages social unrest. No, fosters economic and social equality. That is the goal. So we'll go with that. Supply-side economists would most likely support government actions to combat a deficit budget by. Reagan would say, "Oh, my deficit. What am I going to do?" Privatizing publicly. Yep, they do that. Rolf Klein did it here. Providing subsidies. Nope. Increasing income tax. Nope. Regulating public services. Well, regulating it in the sense of giving less, but you want to deregulate because you want to have less people working for the government. So we're actually going to just say, let's privatize corporations like AGT, sell them off, make some money, make it look like you're the best premier ever, and then leave your province with a huge surplus. That's what we'll say, surplus. Yeah, any other economic ones that are clear? Supporters of economic equality and equal distribution of wealth. So these are left-wing things, would likely favor government policies that privatize. No, that's right-wing. Reduce income tax rates. How are you going to pay for these things? Deregulate. That's right-wing. Promote universal social welfare programs. That's left-wing. There you go. And the last one's on the unit we haven't done yet. Oh man, there's more. How many questions did they release? They released a ton the first time, and then hardly any since. All right, so there's the 2011 released items. I previously did the other two, the 14 and 16, and if I find any more released items, I will go through them. Hopefully that wasn't too painful.